If you could only practice one single habit to improve your writing, this is the habit you should practice. My name is Seth. I'm a full-time fantasy author with over 20 books published, and I make these videos because I remember how confusing it was when I started writing, and I don't want you to be stuck in that same struggle. Have you ever had a burst of creativity that lasted for a few hours or maybe even a few days and then just seemed to dry up and you weren't able to continue to capitalize on it? Or maybe you started a story and you rushed through the first few pages. They just seem to come super naturally. But then all of a sudden, it's like your brain goes blank and you just can't get yourself to write. Maybe you've even had the experience where you know what it is you want to write and what kind of story you want to tell, but you just can't muster up the energy to do it. When I first started writing, I went through this cycle all the time. It was like this never-ending battle of trying to get myself to write, having these bursts of creative energy, and then just sort of falling into these slumps where I couldn't seem to get anything done. It's almost like I was a sponge filled with creativity. But then as I put that creativity onto the page, I would be wrung out and end up bone dry with nothing left to give. And until I was able to recharge my creativity, it was just impossible to make any progress. And I know that I'm not the only person who's experienced this, because as I've talked to other writers, I've realized that this is actually a pretty common thing for creators. We go through these cycles where, if we're lucky, we can write for a few days or even maybe a week or two, but then we just crash and we don't have the creative energy or the juice to keep going. This is such an incredibly frustrating feeling. And if you're there, hopefully I have something that can help you. Some time ago, I ran across a really interesting idea. As writers do, I kind of get obsessed with things and I go down these research rabbit holes, and I am not an athletic person. I don't really like sports. I'm not really into that kind of stuff, but I was researching high performance sports because of a story that I was trying to write. And one of the things that was most interesting to me is to find out that the highest performing athletes spend as much time learning how to rest as they do how to perform whatever sport they're playing in. And they don't just learn how to rest in between games. Instead, they learn how to rest during whatever activity they're participating in. So a great example of this is in a boxing match. When you have two fighters who are going at it, they learn in the brief moments, maybe a few seconds between trading punches, they learn how to rest their body, which is sort of a crazy idea, that they can actually regain their energy during these very brief moments of rest. Something like soccer or football is exactly the same, where in between plays, they're resting their muscles and they're recharging. And the best athletes can actually get back to peak performance in only a minute or two. When you're competing at a very high level, the greatest indicator of success is not who is the best, but who can sustain the highest performance for the longest period of time. But it's not just athletes who can do this. Creatives can do it too. As I thought about this idea, I realized that it was something that I could apply to my life. Because I thought to myself, well, what if I could recharge my creativity instead of in a few days? What if I could do it in a few hours? What if I could do it in a matter of minutes? Would I be able to sustain a higher level of creativity for longer? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. So here's how I do it. First, I had to learn how it is that I actually recharge, because not everybody is the same, and what works for other people doesn't necessarily work for me. Throughout my whole life, I sort of had this idea that in order to rest, I had to be doing nothing. I had to sit on the couch and maybe watch TV, or maybe go and play a video game, or do something that was sort of mindless and didn't really engage my creativity. I figured that when I was outputting a lot, what I needed to do was not output in order to just gain the energy back. What I've discovered is that for me, that's not true. Now, it is true for some people. I know a lot of people who sitting on the couch and doing something quiet that doesn't take a lot of brain space is actually going to recharge them and get them back into their creative space. But that's not the case for me. For me, I need to actually engage with other people. I need to do something that is physical using my body as well as my mind. And so my favorite thing to do to recharge my creativity is actually get together with other people and play board games. Or if that's not an option, go do some exercise while listening to a nonfiction audiobook. Or maybe I'll just take a walk with somebody else and have conversation that whole time we're on the walk. For me, I've realized that I need to have that physical component and I need to have that mental stimulation component. And it really helps if I'm doing something with another person. I am an extrovert, and so I do gain energy when I'm around people. And so rather than that exhausting me, I find that that really helps me recharge. Now, you're probably going to be different. You're probably going to have a different set of activities that are going to help you recharge optimally. It might be worth taking some time to just explore that and figure out what those things are. I would like to add a caveat here that there are some universal things that recharge humans. There have been a lot of studies done on this, and the main one is getting outside into nature. So if you have a place that you can walk where there are trees, there's grass, there's natural stuff, spend a little bit of time. Now, I prefer walking. Again, I like that active use of my body as a way to recharge. Some people prefer not walking, sitting, or laying down. And so whichever one you are, either walk through nature for 20 minutes or sit in nature for 20 minutes, and you will find yourself recharged. And even if you don't directly feel it, studies have shown that your brain is going to operate better after that period of time. So I do like to try to get some interaction with nature into my routine every single day. So the second thing that I did after figuring out what kind of recharging worked best for me is that I did exactly what professional athletes do. I practiced it. And I don't mean just a little bit. I mean that I really practiced. It wasn't just a matter of like, oh, maybe I should do this. It was, here's a certain amount of my day that I'm going to dedicate to practicing this recharging. Because what I found was that when I just said, oh, I should probably do that, I was always too busy. There was never enough time. There's always something you could be doing instead of these activities that recharge you. On top of that, I really like video games. And when I get stressed, I honestly like being by myself. So that's my natural inclination. But what recharges me the best is not playing a video game by myself. It's actually interacting with other people and doing something physical. And so when I learned that, I had to actively practice doing something physical and interacting with other people. So your sort of natural inclination for how you rest might not be accurate. And if it's not accurate, you're actually doing yourself a disservice and you're adding stress as opposed to removing stress by participating in those activities as opposed to the activities that actually help you. So practicing this, actually practicing this recharging is really important. Once I had started practicing it, I found it was really helpful for me to just add a routine into my day that allowed me to rest every single day. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about something called sharpening the saw. And it's really this idea that if you are cutting with a dull saw, it's going to take you forever to cut the log. But if you simply take some time to sharpen your saw, you're going to slice through it in no time at all. And that's sort of how I feel about this practice of active recovery. Instead of saying, I'm just going to work and work and work until I'm exhausted and then I'm going to recover, if I practice this active recovery and I build in time to my day, I find that I can go incredible stretches of time without ever falling into this creative depression. But when I don't build that recovery into my day, when I get too busy or I say, well, I don't really need that, and I sort of shuffle those things off to the side, I still fall into periods of just being unable to write because I have tapped out my creativity and it takes time to recharge. So anyway, I hope that you found some value in this video. If you have, leave me a comment letting me know how it is you recharge. I'm always interested in that kind of stuff.